Hi, I'm Trish. Thank you for joining me for today's study. If you want to get prepared in your own Bible, we're going to begin in Genesis 25 and we'll move into Genesis 27. We've all experienced guilt in some way, but there seems to be a special kind of guilt reserved for mothers. I'm not sure it matters how old your children are. We always find something to question. Did I spend enough time with them? Was I too busy? Was I too strict? Or did I let too much go? Did I protect enough? Did I smother them? Did I make the right decision about school, discipline, church, friendship, or 100 other things that seem so important? Then our children become adults and we find new things to worry about. We look at the choices they're making, the relationships they're entering, or the struggles they're facing, and wonder whether something we did contributed to where they are now. We remember the times we lost our patience. I mean, really, that day when the words just out of us, and we replay those words, and we wish we never said them. We think about the seasons where we were overwhelmed and just didn't have the energy to give much. And sometimes we look back at the knowledge we have now and judge the person we were then, not knowing what we could not have known. Moms can take one moment and carry it around like a sack on their back for years. Of course, our choices matter. Mothers have enormous influence on their children, and there are times when we get something wrong and we need to acknowledge it. But there is a difference between taking a responsibility for something we've done and believing that our children's entire life rests on our shoulders and we have to mother perfectly. Some of us would never say we believe everything depends on us because logically we get it. But right there, deep in our hearts, the belief is what we live in, that everything depends on us. We worry that one wrong decision will ruin our child's future. And when they are struggling, we feel compelled to fix it. When they are heading in a direction that frightens us, we want to step in and take control. We love our children, and sometimes that love gets tangled up with fear. And that is where we are going to begin as we look at Rebekah. Rebekah is often remembered for the deception in Genesis 27, but that's not where the story begins. So before we look at what she got wrong, we need to look at who she was. In Genesis 24, let's look at God's actions that are already in the story. Abraham sends a servant to find a wife for his son Isaac. When the servant arrives near the city where Abram's relatives live, he stops at a well and he prays for God's guidance. He asks for specific indications that he'll be able to see that God is indicating that this particular woman is the one. And before he even finishes praying, Rebekah arrives. Then the servant asks her for a drink. And Rebekah not only gives him water, but offers to draw water for all his camels. And think about that. This wasn't a small gesture because like in the passage it says she came up from the well. So it was probably one of those wells that there were stairs to go down. And camels, like they have that hump. They drink a tremendous amount of water. And Rebecca sees the need and willingly takes on the work of meeting it. And the servant sees all he asked of God being fulfilled and confirmed in this interaction. So God was there. God chose Rebecca. I think that's so important to remember. God chooses us, and he chose her. And I like imagining what it would have been like to be her when I read passages. Here's Rebecca, and she meets him. She hears why he's come, and she agrees to leave her family and travel with him to marry Isaac, a man she's never met and never seen, into a land she's never been in. So she's leaving everything that's familiar to her. And that is so like that had to have been an act of faith. Like just to walk into that. I wonder what she was thinking. If she too had heard something from God and felt a calling, we don't know because the story doesn't tell us that. All we know is that she was willing to step into a future that she could not possibly understand in advance. Rebecca and Isaac married, but she is unable to have children for many years. So Isaac prays for her, and eventually she becomes pregnant with twins. But the pregnancy is so difficult that Rebecca goes to God and asks what is happening. So let's go to Genesis 25, and we're going to start in verse 21. And Isaac prayed for the Lord to the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayers, and Rebekah his wife conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "Is it thus? Why is this happening to me?" So she went and inquired of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two people from within you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." And when her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. And afterwards his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So look at what that says. Verse 22 says that Rebekah went and inquired of the Lord. That tells us something very important about her. Rebecca was God-fearing, and she looked to God for guidance. When something was happening that she didn't understand, she turned to God, and God answered her. God told her that there was two nations within her, and that two peoples would be divided, and the older would serve the younger. Esau was the firstborn, followed by Jacob. Rebecca carried those words with God with her. She knew what he had said about her sons before they were even born. But knowing what God had said did not mean she understood the plan. She didn't know how God would bring it about. Genesis also tells us that as the boys grew, Isaac loved Esau and Rebekah loved Jacob. The family had favorites. Isaac and Rebekah were not united in how they view or raise their sons, and the division between the parents became entangled with the tension between the brothers. By the time we come to Genesis 27, Isaac is old and his eyesight is failing. He called Esau and tells him to go hunting, prepare the food he loves, and bring it to him. Isaac intends to give Esau his blessing, and Rebekah overhears the conversation. So let's pick up the story in Genesis 27, and I'm going to start reading right at the beginning. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the days of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went out to the field to hunt game and bring it in, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speaking to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so I may prepare them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so he may bless you before he dies. But Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself, not a blessing. His mother said to him, Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go bring them to me. So she overhears this and immediately decides what needs to happen. She tells Jacob to bring her 2 young goats so that she prepares the food Isaac loves. And Jacob is to take the food to his father, pretend to be Esau, and receive the blessing before his brother returns. Jacob does point out an obvious problem that Esau is hairy and Jacob's not. Um, and if Esau touches him, he'll realize Jacob's deceiving him. And Jacob's afraid he'll bring a curse on himself instead of a blessing. And Rebekah tells him, Let the curse be on me. So then she prepares the food. She dresses Jacob in Esau's clothes. She covers his hands and necks with goat skin so he feels like his brother. Which, can you imagine that? Goats are hairy. How hairy was this guy? And then she sends him in to deceive his father. Rebekah was not simply watching something go wrong. This was her plan. This was premeditated. I think we miss something very important if we look at this story and see only a manipulative woman who wanted her favorite son to win. Rebekah was a woman who sought God's guidance. God had told her the older son would serve the younger. Now she heard Isaac preparing to bless Esau. She may have believed what God promised Jacob was about to be lost. Again, the Bible doesn't go into details about what Rebekah was thinking, so we can't assume to know that. But what we see is what she did. Instead of going to God as she'd done years earlier, Rebekah took control of the situation. She knew what she believed the outcome should be and decided how to make that happen. Rebekah tried to help God's plan along. I often wonder how often we do the same thing. We know what's good for our children. Sometimes we may even be right. We see the relationship that concerns us, a decision that seems so unwise, or an opportunity we do not want them to miss. We become afraid of what will happen if they do make the wrong choice. So we start helping. We push a little harder. We give advice that was not requested. We step into the situations our children need to work through themselves. We rescue them from the consequences. We try to arrange the outcomes because we're afraid of what will happen if we don't. We tell ourselves that we are doing it because we love them. And overall, it probably is an act of love. Rebekah loved Jacob. Wanting something good for him was not necessarily the problem. The problem was that she became convinced that God's plan depended on her ability to secure it. Her concern became control. Jacob follows Rebekah's plan and goes to Isaac, disguised as Esau. Isaac's a pretty smart man. He does become suspicious and questions Jacob, but Jacob repeatedly lies. And with the goat skins, Esau's clothes and the meal that Rebekah prepared, they all of them together convinces Isaac that Jacob is Esau. So Isaac gives Jacob the blessing intended for his brother. Shortly after, Jacob leaves. Esau returns. And Isaac, oh, he gets that sinking feeling as he realizes that he's been deceived. And Esau cries out bitterly when he learns that Jacob has received the blessing. Let's pick up the story in verse 41. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. But the words of Esau, the older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him in a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be without both of you in one day? Then Rebekah says to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be? So what do we see? Rebekah's plan worked. Jacob received the blessing. But getting the outcome she wanted did not make the way she pursued it right. And it came with consequences. Esau is like furious. Like, we didn't start this far back, but Jacob had already stolen his birthright, and now he stole his blessing. And like, he was so mad that he decided to take care of the matter himself and kill Jacob. And then Rebekah hears what Esau's intending to do, and she sends Jacob away, but she also, like that last part that we read, she's basically manipulating again and asking Isaac to send Jacob. And in a few days, like, their whole world changed. Jacob left. He had to run away. He would have died. And he was gone for many years. And what Rebekah tried to do, protecting one son, caused this massive division between both of them. She deceived her husband and led her son into lying too. As far as we can tell for scripture, Rebekah never saw Jacob again. Ah, that's so painful. Can you imagine having one choice that results in never seeing your child again? Rebekah was a God-fearing woman who sought God's guidance, and she still made a serious mistake as a mother. She loved her son, wanted a good future for him, and made choices that brought painful consequences to her family. Those things can all be true at the same time. You can be a godly person and make an unwise choice, make a sinful choice. Because loving God does not always mean we get it right. Loving our children does not mean that everything we do out of love will be helpful. Sometimes fear gets mixed in with our love, and we don't even recognize it until later. And that's where the guilt begins. We look back and think, if only I'd handled that differently. If only I'd said something else. If only I'd stepped in sooner. If only I'd taken a step back. If only I'd not been so afraid. Perhaps you can see something in Rebekah's story that reminds you of yourself. Maybe fear has caused you to become controlling. Maybe you've become too involved in a decision that belongs to your child. Maybe you've tried to rescue them from every consequence. Maybe you pushed because you were convinced that you knew what needed to happen. The answer is not to pretend that mothers never cause hurt. Sometimes we do. If you have hurt your own child, own it. If you need to apologize, apologize. If there's something you can repair, be part of the healing process. If God is showing you a pattern that needs to change, ask Him in and allow Him to help change it. Taking responsibility for your choices is different than taking responsibility for your child's entire life. Rebekah's choices had consequences, but they did not end God's work. Jacob's life was complicated. He made many mistakes of his own. He was deceived by others just as he had deceived his father, and he experienced conflict, loss, fear, and years of struggle. Yet God remained with him. God worked in Jacob's life in ways Rebekah never could have arranged. God confronted him, changed him, and gave him the name Israel. Jacob became the father of 12 sons, from whom the tribes of Israel came from. And generations later, Jesus came through Jacob's line, through his son Judah. Rebekah's deception was not necessary for God to accomplish his plan. God did not need her to lie to Isaac or manipulate the blessing. But her mistake did not leave God unable to continue his work. His work's still working in you too. Her choice was serious, but it was not more powerful than God. And our choice matters, but we are not all powerful. We can influence our children, but we cannot determine every part of who they become. Our failures do not make us powerful enough to place them beyond the reach of God. Your child will make choices that belong to them. Other people will influence their lives. They will have experiences that you cannot prevent and opportunities you cannot create. They will walk through their own disappointments, consequences, relationships, and encounters with God. You were never meant to carry all of it. But perhaps the question is not, what did I do wrong? But perhaps you need to ask, how am I trying to help God's plan along in my child's life? Has your love been tangled with fear? Has your concern become control? Take those questions to God and ask Him to show you what genuinely belongs to you. There may be something you need to acknowledge. There may be amends to make, a conversation to have, a boundary to respect, or a pattern that needs to change. And ask God what you need to release. You can love your child without controlling every part of their lives. You can offer wisdom without forcing them to follow it. You can remain present without taking over. You can pray for them without living as though everything depends on you. I don't know what you're carrying as a mother. Maybe it's something you truly need to address. Maybe it's regret about a decision you would make differently today. Or maybe you've taken responsibility for things that were never entirely yours. Bring it to God. Ask Him what belongs to you and what does not. Be willing to grow where you need to grow. Remember that you are your child's mother, but you are not their God. Their future does not rest on your ability to get everything right. Your mistakes are not beyond God's knowledge, and your child is not beyond God's reach. Maybe it's time to check the mom guilt at the door.